So Dell has released a fair few of HDR monitors of late, and it's no different here with the S2419HW. Now, although the monitor is HDR, it is only claimed, and that's because of the technology that Dell have used here, which is called edge light, which means that there are LEDs down the left and the right hand sides of the monitor. Now, although yes, it is a HDR monitor, the HDR does suffer somewhat. But saying that, this monitor does perform extremely well, and when comparing it to, say, my old monitor, which was an LG 27MP47, colours were extremely vibrant, and it looks to have a much... Yes? Sorry, hello?
Are you recording?
Yeah, I was. I noticed a slightly sharper and a slightly better colour gamut. Now, that may be because my eyes have got so used to my old monitor because I haven't swapped it out in a long time, but I still think it's actually a really nice feeling to look at this monitor and just witness the actual colour reproduction that you're going to get. So as you can see, this whole entire monitor is extremely minimalistic, and the whole thing is extremely thin as well. I think the thickest part of this monitor I measured out is around 3mm, which is insanely thin, and that's really the section where the stand actually meets the back of the monitor. But you can also see that this monitor has extremely thin bezels as well. And when you're actually looking at the monitor itself, this is a 24-inch that we've got here. If you're looking at the center of the screen where most of the action's happening, like if you're gaming, you look at the crosshair, or if you're reading through a web page, you generally read sort of down the middle anyway, because there's a border on most web pages now, that you can't really notice that there are actually bezels going around the outside because they are just so thin. And it actually looks really, really smart on the desk as well. So the whole thing has been coated in silver, which gives it this very premium feel and probably resembles something very, very similar to like one of those sort of desktop iMacs. Now, this would be really, really nice if you paired it with an iMac because the colours are exactly the same. It has that kind of apple silver finish that you do see on most iMacs and most MacBook Pros as well. So the ports on the back of the Dell monitor are slightly disappointing. You can find the power input only got 2 HDMIs, and there's also an audio pass-through as well if you are looking at running this with a pair of speakers or even your headphones, which you can plug directly into the back of the monitor itself. Now, I will say that if you are using an external graphics card, for example, then you're probably not going to be able to use that audio pass-through because there is only one jack on the back. So you're going to have to run a pair of speakers from the back of your computer anyway. So if you are using a HDMI from the motherboard to the monitor, or from a laptop to this monitor, for example, or even, as I say, the iMac, then you can have HDMI carrying that sound to the monitor and then plug your headphones directly into the back of these, or plug your speakers directly into the back of the monitor, so you can override that audio signal from the back of your PC straight into the monitor. But there are a lack of anything else. There's no display ports, there's no of the older VGA or DVI ports on the back. You haven't got any USB ports for any kind of USB pass-through or charging on from this particular monitor. Everything is just so super, super thin and super skinny that they've really just cut back on the types of inputs that they're really putting on this monitor, which isn't a huge problem. I've only got one HDMI coming from the back of my graphics card anyway, so if you are running single screen setups, which are generally now HDMI from graphics cards, or if you're running multi-screen setups, all you need a HDMI port anyway. Display port, yes, it would have been nice because of that higher bitrate that you do get from display ports, but it's not a huge issue, and it's really not a monitor built for gaming or any type of high-speed picture movements anyway. So one of the design features that I really didn't like is the fact that there is no horizontal swivel. Now, if you have a look, that is stuck in one place, and if you are wanting to horizontally swivel the monitor, you're going to have to move the entire base as well. So wherever this is facing, the front of the base is facing, that's where the screen's going to face. So you have to make sure you've got enough real estate on your desk to have this stand face whichever way you want. I mean, it's a very small stand anyway. There's not huge surface area that you need to worry about, but just keep that in mind. Especially if you are using this as multi-screen setups as well, there's no horizontal swivel, and there's also no vase mount on the back either, so you can't put this on like an external monitor arm or an external monitor stand, that kind of thing. One thing you have got on here though is a tilt, which you can tilt up and tilt down. It's not a huge distance, but it's nice enough that if you are sitting at a desk where your monitor is slightly above you, you can aim it directly at you or slightly at a lower angle, or you can, depending on how tall you are and how low the monitor is on your desk, aim it to look up at directly at your eyes as well. But as it stood on my desk, I kept it in this just standard kind of horizontal typed position. So even though this monitor is very, very minimalistic when it does come to its design and its ports, it's still built extremely well. Now the back of the actual monitor itself feels a little bit plasticky, which you could probably pick that up on the microphone, but the actual stand itself and the base is made from a sort of very, very strong, very tough metal. So it's actually, the actual quality of this monitor, the way it's built, is really nice. As I said, it looks absolutely superb as well. It's a really, really good looking monitor. So because this is the 24-inch monitor that I am looking at, it is only a 1080p monitor. Now Dell do a 27-inch version of this monitor, which does go up to a resolution of 1440p. So that's 2560 by 1440. But you're looking at a lot higher cost. So you have to really weigh up, is HD what you're after, or do you want a little bit more from that picture quality? Now the actual monitor itself isn't the brightest monitor that I've actually used or actually seen or tested, but it's bright enough if you're going to be doing everyday work, even doing things like photo editing and some video editing, because you've got that extra wide color gamut on here for really, really improved color, then it does really help when you are doing things like color grading when you're creating media. So both of the monitors, the 24 and the 27-inch, are both IPS technology, so it uses an IPS screen, which again is very, very good for picture quality. They have 178-degree viewing angles, so you can position that monitor wherever you are, and you can still pretty much see most of it and all the colours in their full glory as well. And it also has this anti-glare kind of coating across the front. Now, in my office, I use my computer, which is pretty much next to a window. Now, I get a lot of sun in the afternoon come through, shining straight onto the screen, and compared to my LG, this was really good. I mean, it doesn't cancel out glare. I can't say that it got rid of the glare completely, but it was a huge difference over my LG, which doesn't have any kind of glare coating on there, or like this matte finish on the screen. And it really, really did help with that. It dispersed the glare so I could still see what was going on with the monitor without having to shut my curtains and shut my blinds and block out the sun. So what really did excite me is this monitor is HDR 400 display ready, which means it can use a 400 CDM2 edge light brightness. It's a lot better than most monitors on the market that can hit really around 300, 320 CDM2 brightness levels, but for true HDR, it is missing out. Now, what I mentioned before about it only being acclaimed HDR, it means that because Dell are using edge light technology, the brightness is only coming from the edges, and it's not coming from the back. Now, for HDR to really act as true HDR, LED lights on the back of this panel, or back of a HDR panel, should I say, need to be localized, and then they need localized dimming. Now, let's say this picture on here, for example, you can see that this bit of sand is dark and the tree's a bit darker. If this was a true HDR monitor, then you would just see it could just turn the LEDs off in these areas to produce a lot deeper blacks, which means that the whites would look a lot brighter because those LEDs are still switched on. Now, because this is edge-lit display, it has to rely on turning off and on LEDs on the edges rather than on the actual back. So that's where you're not really getting a true HDR picture. Although it looks a lot better than non-HDR monitors, it's still not as good looking as kind of true HDR panels. Televisions, that kind of thing, especially when you're watching media content. Dell have kept this very, very minimalistic, and that's probably why they've stuck to edge lighting, because they just wanted to keep everything looking as nice, as slim as possible. But the HDR does suffer for that, because I can't really see there being a huge amount of LEDs are tiny now, but not a huge amount of room inside there to really produce localized dimming on the LEDs. Now, when HDR content is detected on this monitor, it will automatically ramp up the brightness to 600 CDM2 brightness level. So it goes from 400 to 600 when HDR content is recognized on the actual monitor. So to conclude, I think the Dell S2419HM Monitor is a pretty fantastic bit of kit, but if you're looking for something to game on, this may not necessarily be it, because of its low refresh rate and its 5 millisecond response time. It's not going to be able to keep up with things like the likes of competitive Counter-Strike Global Offensive, for example. But if you are looking for something to do photo editing on, video editing on, especially for that large colour gamut, and even if you are looking to play some games on it, I mean, games do look absolutely fantastic, don't get me wrong, but competitive multiplayer games you may lose out on because of that low response time on the actual refresh rate of the monitor. But for all media consumption or media creation, then I don't think you can really go too wrong, especially if you're not a professional. If you're not looking at professional grade kit, then yeah, this monitor is absolutely fantastic. Now, if you do want any more information on the monitor, I can leave links in the description, especially for the 27-inch size as well. I say we're looking at the 24-inch monitor here, but check out the links in the description. Thank you very much for checking out our video review of the Dell S2419HM Monitor. If you enjoyed this review, then do click that like button. Please do subscribe to keep up with all of our latest tech and gaming videos, and also let us know in the comments what you think of this monitor and whether it's something that you would invest in or whether you would be looking for something with a higher refresh rate for your games, or whether something like this would be absolutely perfect for your workflow and your work needs. As I say, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.